Right now.
Right now?
Yes.
Afternoon, everybody.
Afternoon.
No, I saved it for next Sunday. And ain't no problem, Pastor.
No, we want to hear today. We can't do
Well, I'm gonna keep it brief because similar to my baby brother last Sunday, as he told me after the fact, part of what I had prepared, you had touched on during today's service. So but sometimes I guess it's God's way of saying we're gonna reinforce a certain time.
Confirmation.
So I got two scriptures I'm gonna talk about today. We're going to piggyback off the devotional reading on St. Matthew's, the 7th chapter, the 21st verse. And St. Matthew's, the 7th chapter, and the 21st verse reads, "Not everyone that saith unto me, Lord, Lord, shall enter into the kingdom of heaven, but he that doeth the will of my Father which is in heaven." We're going to stop right there and then switch to 2 John, near the back of the Bible. 2 John is only one chapter. We're going to look at the 8th and 9th verse. And 2 John, 8th and 9th verse. "Look to yourselves that we lose not those things which we have wrought, but that we receive a full reward. Whosoever transgresseth and abide not in the doctrine of Christ hath not God. He that abideth in the doctrine of Christ, he hath both Father and the Son." And that's it. So, now, I didn't feel like talking. Now, I'm sure Daniel did a good job last Sunday, and I'm sure Pastor Walton will do a good job talking about how the church ought to be built on a rock. But I felt like I talking about something different. I felt like having a conversation kind of to make sure that while the church is built on a rock, that rock is stable. Because we know, as of last year, COVID shook the world. All of us in our own way, whether we had to stop working, stop going out, whether our routine, our normal life, everything, the tradition, customs, etc., everything had to get either changed or just flat out stopped. And life became, for some, predictable. To be honest, we didn't know what was going to happen next. And for others, a little bit more chaotic, because not only we at home, but I believe the statistic was close to 1 in 5 people lost their jobs or laid off or furloughed off, or I didn't know what furlough meant until people started to get set down. But obviously, despite us knowing that the world ain't perfect, we had problems before COVID with the shootings we talked about earlier, morality continuing to change. Above all that, then we had to stop. And for some of us that when we stopped, obviously it was a huge detriment to others. They had it easy. I can speak from, I know that others, had it rough and had to make ends meet or rely on government assistance. Where on the other side of the coin, I recognize my blessing. I kept my paycheck, and the work kept coming in. But so you had all these different things happening. But now that we're starting to get back into the beginning stages of normalcy, the question I have for those here, but more so for the people who aren't here, and I don't normally talk about people who aren't in church, because you never want to judge or assume. But for this moment, I will ask the question, how much do we love the Lord? How much do we really love the Lord? Because as we touched on in Matthew's earlier, everybody that says they believe in God, everybody that says that they love, don't really mean it. And that applies both in the church and out the church. Because we know the devil's in church. We know the devil likes to do his good work in the church. We know, us here, we know that even before COVID, attendance was on a slight decline, and we can obviously attribute that to just the world being what it is. But to use as an example today, the church, our church, is not as filled up as it ought to be. And again, I'm just using this as an example. But what about other churches? It shows where people are in the world. But I'm talking about purely the population of people who say they love Jesus, who say they love, that they dedicate their life to church. They came to church before COVID, maybe not all the time, but now that we're post-COVID, where are they? They say that they built their church on a rock, their salvation on a rock. But when the storm of COVID came and the storm of other things that occurred in the world, just again, another example, the Black Lives movement and police brutality, these things are coming greater to light. So you got the storm of life really is rocking the boat right now. And throughout the storm that hits the house that ought to be built on a rock, that foundation of many people who aren't in church today looks to be built on sand. We need to take us, not just them, but us collectively, we need to remember why we come to church, why we ought to come to church, why we pay our tithe, why we read our Bible, pray to Him daily. We know that none of us are perfect, save God, of course. But we have to remember that we do all this to seek the promised salvation that I'm sure we talked about in Sunday school. The hard work is already done. Jesus paid the price. And so all we need to do is have the faith and obedience. Obedience for stuff that really isn't all that hard. But again, where are they? We ought to have better control over our mind. Because while the world is a big place, who we are, we can make it real small. And control our own selves. Control the distractions that tug away from us. I felt the need to talk about this, because I was thinking about the disciple John, who was blessed to see a lot of the miracles. One could argue most of the miracles that Jesus had done in his time, and to my recollection, being the last disciple alive. And obviously we know he wrote the book of Revelations. So we know that he lived a long life. And one could say that he may have been discouraged along the way, because in his younger years Jesus was here, but throughout the rest of his life he was doing the mission of Jesus and dealing with whatever trials of life he had, not to mention seeing himself and others be persecuted. And during his older age, he wrote to not lose our salvation that we work so hard to achieve. We work so hard to get it, to understand it, and to live it. And we shouldn't allow just the world to shift our priorities.
Thank you, Jesus.
The big thing that we ought to remember is to never be complacent. Because the devil is always at our front door looking for a way in. Especially to those who are lukewarm, this Christian walk is a daily lifestyle, not just a simple part. We say that we love Jesus because He first loved us.
Yes.
But when put to the test, obviously in COVID, and now I'm getting back to the church. Was that all talk?
My Lord.
Obviously, everyone in here, for the most part, we can all say for ourselves that it's not just talk. Because at the first opportunity, we came back to the church house. We made ends meet because we had to, but now that we're in the church, we're giving God the praise and sharpening each other once again like we have done so many, many years. Now, for those who aren't here, if you say you love someone, it's easy to see that you love, for example, you love your friends, your family, but how do you show that love? Through words alone? No. Money? Well, it's helpful, but no. Rich families can explain the lack of love in those families. Your actions, your works, those things show love. Faith without works is dead inside of God. Your love to God without your actions to back it up is dead. You love God, you love what He's done, then you ought to show it.
Well,
If you love someone, your actions reflect it. Love is an emotion that no one should question. Obviously, if you're not coming to church, if your life isn't reflecting that, then that love is called into question. Do you say it or do you really mean it? Like a good or bad marriage, you'll know for certain if love is there. Our relationship with God is a blessing because He held His love up. He's held His part of the relationship.
yes.
And He gave His Son to die for us.
Yeah.
So don't lose your love for Christ. Remember it. Don't lose it. Remember the salvation that we work so hard to achieve. Don't become complacent. Don't take it for granted. Be a witness for the Lord. Be a joyful person. Just whatever you do, don't lose it.
Yeah.